welcome back to building a web application from scratch. My name is Matt, and in this video, we're going to be creating our data models for our users, accounts, lists, and tasks. So creating the data models for all of our entire project. So let's go ahead, and while we're in our Kanban board right now, let's look at our epics. In our last video, I think we finally wrapped up setting up our project epic, and we're going to do creating data models next. Let's go ahead and open that up, and we should see all the tasks inside of this epic. So we have users, accounts, lists, tasks. So creating a schema for all these. So we're going to do a little more than that actually. Let's go ahead and open up our user schema, and I'm going to rename this to create users module. And we're going to go ahead and let's just polish this off, and we'll polish all these off before we start doing our work. So users should have an ID, username, email, password, first name, last name. So true. Beyond that, we're going to create a DTO file for this, which is going to essentially say these are the required data types and data values that are allowed to be used when creating the user. We're going to create that whole module, and everything's going to sit inside of it. So the path we're going to go for this, and it's going to be the same for the accounts, lists, and tasks, is we're going to create a module inside an SGS, which is going to create a module for us. And then inside of there, we're going to create a schema directory and a DTO directory. And then we're going to create a schema file and DTO files inside of those directories to kind of complete the whole data model setup. And then we're going to make sure that those values are then imported into our users module file, and that those are included inside of our Nest.js app as well. So let's just go ahead and map out these subtasks for this. So the first one, we're going to create a user module. After that, we're going to create new directories. And then we're going to create schema and DTO files. And then we're going to make sure everything is imported in that. Alrighty. And then let's go ahead. Let's leave that alone for now. We'll see the rest as we go. So let's go ahead and save our task. Make sure it's saved. Back to previous tasks. So we create a schema for our accounts. Let's view this. And we're going to say create account data model module. So subtask, we're going to create account module. We're going to create new directories. I know a little bit of it's busy work, but it's important to kind of write this stuff down when, working through a project, because you're able to mark, you can look back and see everything that you've done. So then we'll create schema and DTO files. And we'll ensure import. Save that task. Create a schema for lists. So let's do that. So we're going to create list module. Subtasks, we're going to say create list module. Create new directories. And we'll say create schema and DTO files. And then we're going to ensure imports. Save. Create a schema for tasks. So our last one, create tasks module. Subtasks, we're going to create tasks module. Create new directories. And then we're going to create schema and DTO files. Well, alrighty. The previous page. All right. We can go ahead. Let's go to our Kanban board and just drag these over to in progress. Alrighty. So now that we've got it all planned out, let's go ahead and go to our text editor. Let's go ahead and open up a terminal and let's cd into the backend of our project. So cd backend, cd nest server. All right, so now inside of our nest server, we can run nest generate module, and we're going to say users. Just run. Alrighty. So now if we look at our source directory, you can see we have our users module right here. You can see the file inside of there. So now let's go ahead and create that directory. So we're going to go ahead and say new folder, schemas, new folder, and we're going to say DTO. So now in our schemas, we'll create a new file and we're going to call this user.schema.ts. All right. So now let's go ahead and create that schema. So we're going to say import. I'm going to say prop schema factory from Mysterious Mongoose. And then we're going to say import document from Mongoose as well. And then we're going to say at schema. We're going to say timestamps true. And we're going to say export class user extends document. And this is where we're going to give it all of our values. The timestamps just require, it's essentially saying to just add the timestamps by default whenever the object is created. So now let's go ahead and say at prop. We say required is true. Unique is going to be true. Lowercase is going to be true. Trim is going to be true. And then we're going to say username. And we're going to say it has to be string. So let's do the same for the email. So we're going to say prop required true unique true lowercase true trim true. And email is going to be a string. So let's do the password. Required. Be true. Unique. No, we don't want it to be. Since you're going to say select false. I think that's all we're going to do for this one. So wrap that in the brackets. And then we're going to say password. Going to be string. What does it not like about this? Oh, we wrapped it wrong. Screw it. Let's just redo that. There you go. Okay. So then we're going to say at prop. Let's do the first name. So we're going to say required. True. And then we're going to say trim. True. So no spaces. First name is string. And we're going to same for the last name. So that's all we're going to do there. So then at the bottom, we're going to say export const user schema equals create for class schema factory create for class user. All right. Save. Next, we're going to do the DTO files. So we're going to go ahead and inside of our DTO, we're going to directory, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to say, what are we going to call this one? Let's call this create user.dto.ts. And what we're going to say is we're going to say import is email is not empty is string and min length for class validator. All right, and then we're going to say export class create user DTO. The first thing is we're going to do at is string, that's what we want, is not empty, that's what we want, and we're going to say username string. Then we're going to say at is email, it's not empty, email string. Then we're going to say is string. Actually, I don't think we need the is not empty for the email. It's implied for that. And so then we want the min length. Minimum length 8 characters seems fine with me. Password string, and then we're going to say is string is not empty. First name string is not empty. Last name string, and there we go. Go ahead and save that, and then we're going to create one more file, and we're going to say update user.dto.ts. All right. So then our update, we're going to import. We're only going to let people update. So we're going to is optional. an is string or class validator. So the only values we're going to let people update is their first name and last name. Once you've created your as a user, we're not going to let them update their email or username, and then we'll create a separate DTO later for updating the password. Because passwords are unique, we don't want to lump them with creating or updating the user with their email. It's going to be a different type of function, so we're going to keep those separate. So then let's say export update user DTO is optional, is string. I'm going to say first name is optional, is string, last name, string. Close that up. Super simple. They don't have to add those values. So perfect. Those are created. So now we want to connect the schema to Nest.js by registering it inside of our module. So we go to our user module, you'll see that it's not in there. So what we want to do is we're going to come in, we want to import our Mongoose module. That's correct. Import our user and user schema. That's correct. And then inside of our module, we want imports. And we want to say Mongoose module. And it really knows what you're trying to type. Pretty cool. For feature, name, username, schema. So it's essentially just declaring that user schema inside of our user module. So now we can import and actually use our user module across our application. So I guess we actually do want to make sure our app loads by checking our app.module file as well. But in our app.module, you should see it should already automatically import. So when you create the module of Nest.js, it automatically adds it to your app module. But since we manually created the schema, we had to go in and manually add that to our user module. So now that user schema is declared inside of our user module. So now whenever we create our services and we create our, I'm drawing a blank on them for some reason. Whenever we create our APIs, we're going to be able to use the schema throughout that process. Okay, so account data module. Let's go ahead and move on and create our account module. So we're going to go through the same thing here. Nest ng module, nest generate module accounts. Alrighty. So now we want to create that schema file. Let's make sure we use user schema. So let's go ahead and create our new folder, and we're going to call this schemas. New folder, UTL. Inside our schemas, we'll create a new file, and we're going to call this account.schema.ts. All right. So inside of here, we're going to say import prop schema factory, import document, and then we're going to say schema timestamps true. To do that by default, export class account extends document. All right, so before we type it out, what we want to do for our account is the only things we really need to give it are an ID, which is automatically included when creating it in MongoDB. So we're not creating a unique ID for this ourselves. Whenever we create an account inside of our Atlas MongoDB, it's going to automatically get a MongoDB ID, and we're going to use that as that account identifier. Right, it's already a unique ID, so we can just go ahead and use that. There's no reason for us to create one on our own. So now you would create those on your own. Let me just go ahead and say you wanted to have like a unique ID if you logged into say like HubSpot and you see like an ID of an account of like hub dash 154263. That's a manually created ID, right? So you could set those and create those for our use case. There's just no need to. We're not going to do that. The unique one created by MongoDB is going to be good enough. All right, so let's go ahead and create this out. So we're going to say at prop required true. We're going to say types dot object ID ref user, saying it's going to be a user. And we actually need to say types. We would probably have to declare that up here. Yeah, types. Import that with the document. Types object ID, it's user, and then we're going to say owner type object ID. And let's go ahead and close that up. We're going to export that account schema as account. So that's all we need to add, because we're just going to essentially create, when a user registers, we're going to create that user. And then when that user is created, we're also going to create an account. And then we're going to essentially link that user ID to that account. So whenever we load an account, we can look at that owner and we can look at the owner collection inside of MongoDB and find that owner of that account. We don't have to store those together. Let's go ahead and save. And let's create our DTO. So we'll create a new file and we're going to say create account.dto.ts. And we're going to say import is Mongo ID, export class create account DTO is Mongo ID, owner string, close it, save. That's all we need to do. We're not going to do an edit account because the values that we have in here right now are not editable, right? We've created our account. We have our owner linked. We're not going to allow anything else to be changed. If in the future we add more information to our account schema, we can then create an update account DTO, but there's no reason to create one now when the data we have doesn't exist for it. So now let's go ahead and go to our account module and make sure everything's imported there. So import mongoose module account schema. We're going to say import mongoose module for feature, and we're just going to declare that account schema inside of our module. So whenever we create our APIs, we can use that schema and pull information and save information as we need. At module, make sure account module is imported. We're all good. All right, now we're picking up some speed. Let's go ahead and create our next module of lists. So we're going to go ahead and create module lists. See right here. Let's go through the same thing. New folder. Schema. We say schemas. Rename. Schemas. Keep it consistent. New folder. DTO. Set our schemas. We'll create a new file. And we're going to say list.schema.ts. And then inside of our list, we're going to say import prop schema factory. And we're going to use the document and types as well here. Let's go ahead and put that timestamp as true. Export class list extends document. Alrighty. So what we want for our list is it's going to again get an automatic ID through MongoDB, but we want to give the list a name and we want to link that list to an account. So once you're in an account, you can create a list. You'll need to be able to name that list. That list will be created, but we have to be able to pull the list of lists in an account to show. And so we'll look through the collection of lists for a particular account ID. So we have to have that account ID linked. So we're going to say at prop. We're going to say required true, and then trim true. And we're going to call that name, and we're going to say at prop. And it already knows. Let's go ahead and type it out. Required true, and type is going to be types dot object ID. The reference is this needs to be an account. And then we're going to say account types object ID, close that up, and export our list schema as list. Save. And then let's go ahead and create our DTO documents. So we are going to allow for the update of a list. We're going to let people update the name. So we're going to say create list DTO TS. So in our create list, we're going to import is Mongo ID, correct. Is not empty, correct. Is string, correct. We want all those. So we're going to say export class create list DTO. So we're going to say is string, is not empty, name. And essentially what we're saying is like it can't be an empty string here. You can sometimes say values as like this. It doesn't allow that. That's what that is not empty does. Just FYI. Next one is Mongo ID, and we're going to call that account. Close that up, save. Simple as that. And then in our update list, we're going to say create a new file and call it update list.dto.ts. And in here, we're just going to allow for the editing of the name. So we're going to say import, not is optional because it's not an optional field. We're going to say is not empty, is string, export class. Well, we don't want that. Export class, update list is optional. No, we don't want that. So let's see, this is where sometimes I can see right. Say at is string. Needs to be a capital. And we're going to say is not empty, name. And it is not optional. You have to provide it. Close. Save. So then let's go to our list module. Let's import the same stuff. We're going to import our Mongoose module and then our list and list schema. Inside of our module, we're going to create our imports. And using our Mongoose module, we're going to declare our list schema. Go ahead and save. And let's look at that app module, make sure it's imported. All right, our last one. So let's go ahead and do tasks. So we're going to create that module in SJS of tasks. Let's close this all up. So inside our tasks, we're going to create a new folder, DTO, new folder, schemas. Inside of our schemas, create a new file, task.schema.ts. All right. And so inside of our task schema, for our tasks, we're going to need a timestamp. and we're going to have a name. We're going to have a completed, which is going to be a Boolean value of true or false. And then we're going to tie that task to a list. So we'll already have our lists associated to our accounts, and we'll have our tasks associated to our lists. So that way we can separate a task from an account, and it doesn't matter like what account we're looking at. If that list is there for that account, we can provide the task for there, right? We can always update that if we need, but right now I think it's smart to separate that task from that account specific and just keep it linked to that list. Because what happens if in the future we want to maybe allow for other accounts to access the lists? In that case, we just have to update our lists and say maybe an array of accounts that the lists are associated to if you wanted to share them. And then you don't have to keep that data synced at that task level as well. At the end of the day, the task belongs to the list, not the account. And that's the way I've thought about it. So you can see while it's pretty easy to build these schemas and build these models, that you do kind of have to think about what is it that you want to create in the future and how you can set this up to allow it to grow. And I always like to keep my data kind of abstract in that way, right? I'm a user, but my user isn't associated to a particular account, which means if I wanted to in the future have a user associated to multiple accounts, I would just look at all the accounts that the user is linked to, right? I don't have to necessarily keep that data synced. I don't like the multiple chains of keeping those IDs, right? A list is associated to an account. In the future, we could associate some more accounts. At the end of the day, we don't want to also have to keep that task associated, right? We just keep that a task associated with the list it belongs to, and then it will always show up when we need it. All right, so enough of that, and let's go ahead and create our schema. So import, we're going to say prop schema. It's got to be capitalized. Schema factory, documented types, say timestamps true, export class task is going to extend our document. And so we're going to say at prop required true trim I spell it right, name the string, and we're going to say at prop we're going to say required true. We're going to say completed. It's going to be a Boolean value. Sure that trim is true. And then we're going to say at prop required true type types object ID, reference is going to be list, and we're going to say list object ID, close that up, save, and then we're going to export that schema. We're going to export const task schema factory create for class task, save, and let's create that DTO file. So new file, we're going to say create task.dto.ts. So we're going to say import is Mongo ID is not empty. I'm going to say is Boolean and is string from class validator. So we're just going to say export class create task DTO is string is not empty name. We're going to say is Boolean completed I'm going to say is Mongo ID list. Save. All right. And then so when we update our task, which let's create that DTO, we're going to allow for the state to be changed as well as the name to be changed. Actually, no. Yeah, we'll let it be. Well, do we really want to let that happen? Do we really want to change the name? Yeah, we'll go ahead and let it. So we'll say new file, update, task, DTO, TS. So we're going to say import is not empty, is boolean, is string. Then we're going to say export class update task DTO is string is not empty name is boolean completed save. Go to our task module, same stuff. Import that mongoose module as well as that task schema. And then inside of our module imports, let's import that task schema. So we've declared that schema inside of our task module. Make sure that that's imported and we are good to go. So just to kind of recap, we've created our data modules for our users, tasks, lists, and accounts. So we've really created our schemas in that our data models for our entire application right there. And we're ready to kind of start, programming and getting our actual API set up for authentication and stuff because we now have the ability to create those users, create those accounts. We have those data types declared. So if I go back to our Kanban board, we can go ahead and move all these over to done. Let's go into each one. Let's mark our subtasks as done. And mark our task as completed. Create account module. Let's mark those subtasks as done. Mark that task as completed. Always a good feeling to mark a task as completed. Mark off all those subtasks. I know when we go through it all at once, you're like, okay, why would we create all those extra subtasks? We know what we're doing. But if we didn't, we would know exactly where we left off. Which is why it's nice to create those so you can keep track of that progress that you're making. Alrighty, so we marked those all as completed. We created all of our data models for our project. Great work. I mean, this is a great step to completing our application. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I'll see you guys in the next video.